been responding and intercepting some of those projectiles. Let's bring in ABC's chief global affairs correspondent, Martha Raddatz, who is joining us now on the phone. Martha.
Okay, this is reported 15 minutes ago.
You've been sending some emails, some reports from your sources. What do we know about these missiles and drones that Iran is sending to Israel now?
With the U.S. official I have been speaking to this evening said they expect 400 to 500 drones and missiles to be heading towards Israel. That is clearly happening right now. As you know, a wave of drones were launched several hours ago. The missiles have been launched more recently, just about 150 missiles so far, but then that swarm of drones. And the Iranians have timed this so they all go towards their target at once. They are indeed trying to overwhelm the air defenses. Another really important point here is that the U.S. is clearly involved in trying to intercept. The U.S. official told me they're trying to intercept everything they can. They're doing that from the Red Sea. They're doing that from the Mediterranean and throughout the Middle East, where they do have air defenses. Others are trying to help as well. This comes after the Iranians warned the U.S. not to help, to stay out of it. Basically, according to this U.S. official, Iranians said to the U.S., if you don't involve yourselves in this, we will stay away from you. And yet tonight we are seeing that the U.S. is shooting down missiles, drones, whatever they can do to keep them away from Israel and to try to keep Israelis safe. They've also, according to this U.S. official, these drones and missiles are headed towards 3 military facilities. They said they do not think they are purposefully aiming at civilian areas, but these are not completely accurate drones or missiles, and there could certainly be, as Britt pointed out, some sort of damage from these, not only from the missiles or drones themselves that they may not be able to intercept, but from falling debris as well with.
And Martha, we know that Israel has one of the most sophisticated air defense systems in the world. We talk about the Iron Dome and then the support from the U.S. now. Is it your sense in talking to your sources that the magnitude of this attack from Iran is a surprise in any way, or is this consistent with what they were expecting?
I think it is a surprise. I think it is larger than they expected, much worse than they expected, and they are so focused on trying to get these missiles and drones down. But even if they get 85% of them down, it's bound to hit something. They're bound for some of those missiles or drones to get through to their target. If right now what we're seeing, and Britt, they're right in the middle of it, seeing these swarms of drones, these swarms of missiles that really could overwhelm the system.
Martha, stand by for us for a moment, if you could. I want to go back to Britt Clennett because, Britt, I understand you're hearing sirens right now in Jerusalem. If you're able to hear us, can you tell us what you're seeing, what you're hearing?
At the moment, we're not. That doesn't mean that it's not happening in other parts of Jerusalem, but this does seem to be a period of eerie quiet, especially after we heard those several interceptions and, as I say, the wailing of the air raid sirens. But as far as I can see, it doesn't seem like there are any interceptions at the moment or any imminent danger.
Okay, Britt, thank you. Martha, I'd like to bring you back in here because you were talking about the calculation from the U.S. And, of course, for weeks, the move has been to try to prevent an escalation across the region. What does this do to our position right now, and how does the U.S. respond militarily?
I think the U.S. will do everything possible not to respond militarily. They want to put themselves in a defensive position to defend Israel, not to go after Iran. But what they are most worried about now is how Israel responds to this, what Israel does. And proportional, how do they look at a proportional after what they have just seen? If indeed there is loss of life, I would imagine that Israel's response will be larger than if there is not. And that's one of those things that the president and his national security team are talking about tonight. They have obviously been in touch with Israel all week and the Israelis about how they would respond, trying to tamp this down. But with 400, 500 possible drones and missiles expected this evening, it's pretty hard to tell Israel what to do.
And Martha, we know that President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu have a frosty relationship. They had a conversation recently, but is there any suggestion that, when the U.S. or President Biden makes these pleas to Netanyahu and his government, that they would actually listen to them or continue to go forward with their own plans?
Well, over the several months, President Biden, of course, has been talking to Prime Minister Netanyahu, asking them to please let more humanitarian aid into Gaza, to please take more care with civilian casualties. And Prime Minister Netanyahu has basically said, this is our fight. Stay out of it, essentially. The White House keeps going back to them. They're getting stronger and stronger on that. And yet
Well, Israel has the right to defend themselves.
We had an extremely worrying night here in Israel, where in the last hour alone, we've heard the sound of sirens and loud booms, including in areas right across the country, which has just rattled so many people after dozens of drones and potentially missiles entered Israeli airspace. In fact, I believe we have some footage of that. Again, you can hear the sound of sirens blaring, and you can see some of those interceptions. Now, we understand the U.S., Israel, and the Jordanian military intercepted much of that, and so too has Israel's incredibly sophisticated missile defense systems. We also understand that Israel's war cabinet is meeting in Tel Aviv here at this very hour, and we're also hearing reports that there is at least one casualty. Again, reports that there is at least one casualty. The concern is that could change in the coming hours following this unprecedented attack from Iran on Israel inside Israeli territory, something Iran has never done, but warned it would, as you so rightly said, following last week's strike on its embassy in Damascus, destroying that building and killing that senior commando. Now, very quickly, the U.S. Embassy here in Jerusalem has told all U.S. government employees to shelter in place until further notice, and according to a security alert, that as these drones and missiles continue to be launched at Israel, that there's a lot of concern here for the safety of people. And again, finally, we've heard from Iran's foreign ministry, which said that they were responsible for tonight's attack. Wejo.
Imtiaz, thank you. I want to bring in Face the Nation moderator and chief foreign affairs correspondent Margaret Brennan. Margaret, the U.S. has said for days now that this attack was imminent, and we know today that the U.S. shot down one Iranian drone at least. Can you talk about how much the U.S. played in deterring this attack?
U.S. deterrence has been a factor here, and this attack was so well telegraphed by Iran. They said they would do something. They took a week to do it since that initial April 1st attack on Iranian generals in Syria. They viewed that as an attack on their sovereign territory, said they would respond, sending slow-moving drones, saying you're going to do something. All of that indicates, as they have said both publicly and privately, that they are not looking for conflict with the United States and are trying to calibrate a response. And there's been a flurry of diplomatic activity, with U.S. passing written messages to Iran through intermediaries, having others call and urge.
Don't know if you can see that in the corner, but this is in Bethlehem, Israel. And this was just 2 hours ago. This report here.
Tehran not to escalate this further. So we know there are U.S. aircraft, as you mentioned, there are U.S. vessels in the region to try to also underscore that the United States stands by militarily its ally Israel here. But the U.S. is also advising Israel on what their response to this will be.
And tonight we are continuing to hear from Iran through a tweet it sent through its United Nations mission. I want to share this with our viewers. They say that this matter can be deemed concluded. However, should the Israeli regime make another mistake, Iran's response will be considerably more severe. It is a conflict between Iran and the rogue Israeli regime from which the U.S. must stay away, in all caps. Margaret, they claim it's over. They also have a warning for the U.S.
Weija, an extremely worrying night here in Israel, where in the last hour alone, we've heard the sound of sirens and loud booms, including in areas right across the country, which has just rattled so many people after dozens of drones and potentially missiles entered Israeli airspace. In fact, I believe we have some footage of that. Again, you can hear the sound of sirens blaring, and you can see some of those interceptions. Now, we understand the U.S., Israel, and the Jordanian military intercepted much of that, and so too has Israel's incredibly sophisticated missile defense systems. We also understand that Israel's war cabinet is meeting in Tel Aviv here at this very hour, and we're also hearing reports that there is at least one casualty. Again, reports that there is at least one casualty. The concern is that could change in the coming hours following this unprecedented attack from Iran on Israel inside Israeli territory, something Iran has never done, but warned it would, as you so rightly said, following last week's strike on its embassy in Damascus, destroying that building and killing that senior commando. Now, very quickly, the U.S. Embassy here in Jerusalem has told all U.S. government employees to shelter in place until further notice, and according to a security alert, that as these drones and missiles continue to be launched at Israel, that there's a lot of concern here for the safety of people. And again, finally, we've heard from Iran's foreign ministry, which said that they were responsible for tonight's attack. Weija.